I can assure you it's a good time is held by all for small table discussion of topics. We don't have dues at this club, but donations to help defray the expenses of coffee and cookies or other, in the future, perhaps more nutritious substitutes. It's not your time to talk yet, Lou. All right. I have a couple of announcements that I want to make this morning. First of all, I want to welcome back Bill Walmart. He's a member of our board who was disabled by back problems and now is up and moving. Yay! Great to see you, Bill. A couple of other things that have been brought up as suggestions, and this is at the suggestion phase at this point, is forming a golf group composed of humanist freethinkers that are interested in playing golf. Does anyone here particularly have any interest at all in that? Okay. Well, there will be a email questionnaire or asking for response that will come out about this in the near future, and we'll take it from there. A coordinator of that has yet to be designated, and that will be an issue, I think, for getting a group set up. Another suggestion that's been made is on the Sundays that we do not have meetings, typically the fourth Sunday, that we have one of the old poolside informal meetings here at Canal, like Mike Enright used to run, for really just social interaction and chatter with regard to issues of mutual interest, but without a really structured format. Would anyone here be interested in doing that? Okay. Once again, a questionnaire will be sent out by email asking you to respond up or down to that, and we'll take it from there. Again, someone to coordinate that will be needed. All right. The next meeting of this club will actually be on December the 8th as opposed to the 1st because of Thanksgiving weekend, and that will be a social Sunday that Pam will run. Then on the 15th, Jim Press will be giving us a talk on the lost cause mentality, which I think should be interesting.
I think it's the mythology.
Okay. I think we'll leave the presentation to decide which of those is the most appropriate. All right. And then the next Free Thinkers meeting is on the 5th at Aviary. Bud is here. Do you want to tell us about that?
Okay. The meeting will have Peter Irwin as the speaker, and the topic is rationales for a war. So what are the reasons countries go to war, and are there good reasons and bad reasons?
All right. I look forward to that. Today, we're lucky to have Lou Sasmore with us to present the issue of intelligent design, evolution, and how they should be taught. Dr. Sasmore has past experience as an electrical engineer and in biomedical engineering, and he has also strong didactic roots, which you can tell just by interacting with him. All right. Lou, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Can you hear me tonight?
Yes.
Am I clear? Okay. Before I start this, I got to explain something. I first gave this talk 11 years ago And it was almost a silly topic, because except for a few extreme fundamentalist religious groups, nobody was seriously challenging the theory of evolution. Even then, all that most of these extreme groups wanted was when you taught biology and you got to evolution, you included a phrase that said something like, evolution is what current science theory supports, but there could be other explanations. Thank you, State of Florida. While I was teaching high school biology, I was required to make that statement at some point. Very quickly now, let's go on to the rest of the subject. Okay. Since then, unfortunately, there's been in this country a growing increase in extreme conservative and religious fundamentalist thinking and political power, as well as a movement to rewrite both history and deny the evidence and validity of science. So this is no longer a silly topic. With increasing extremist control, particularly in education, at the primary school level, we're going to have to fight this fight again. So here we go, once again. Intelligent design versus evolution. Let's define terms. Intelligent design basically says certain features of the universe and living things can best be explained by an intelligent cause, not undirected random. So things are just working too well, everything's so well organized, somebody had to organize it. Okay. And that, of course, somebody is God, we know that. Evolution says the change in inherited characteristics of a biological population over several generations, successive generations, with those better adapted to survive being more likely to reproduce. That's Darwin's original statement. Obviously, they can't both be right. So, again, why bother? Well, right now, Christian fundamentalism and anti-science groups want creationism taught because evolution is only a theory. And to support that, they come up with some interesting proofs, some interesting documentation for creative, intelligent design. It used to be called creation science. See, back in the 80s, early 80s, the school boards down in Texas, and they have tremendous control over textbook content because they're one of the biggest ones. They wanted to include a section on creation science. And it took till the mid-80s for the courts finally to say there is no such thing as creation science. So they came up with a new one. This textbook that was printed in Texas called Pandas and People, biology textbook. First used in 1989, high school book. The courts ruled you can't have creation science, so we'll come up with our alternative design, intelligent design. So that lasted for a while until, surprisingly, a court in Texas said, you can't do this, people. You cannot uncouple intelligent design from its religious roots. It's not science. It is, in fact, religious. And it kind of went away. Unfortunately, it didn't go away permanently. Let's make sure we know what we're talking about. Let's see, what does this say? Intelligent design. Was it just a chance accident that slew 85% of the species on Earth just so we could go ahead and evolve, get out of the way for mankind? And only he who created man in his own image could also have designed organisms absolutely adapted to the human defenses such as influenza, Ebola, and flesh-eating virus. So I guess this is kind of the other side of intelligent design. Look, there are some legitimate arguments for it. I shouldn't say legitimate. There are some common arguments for it. And we're going to talk about each one of these briefly. Teleological arguments about structure, complexity, the anthropic principle. These are all things that to some degree, are cited as examples. Now, you know we're going to start way back. Here is Thomas Aquinas, a 12th century Catholic theologian. He says, natural things act to achieve the best results, assumption. And as they cannot do this without intelligence, assumption, an intelligent being must exist, setting the goals and providing direction, and this being is God. Apparently, as a theologian, it is considered logically correct to start with two base assumptions, and from that derive a conclusion with nothing provable. But apparently, okay, you can do that as a theologian. Oops, sorry, wrong button there. Oh dear. Now we got to get out of this.
Excuse me, while he's doing that, oh, okay, great.
Thank you. Unfortunately, my computer died this morning when we got here. So we got this where I'm not that familiar with it. Be very careful what button it was. Here's intelligent design.
Platypus.
An egg-laying monotreme with a bill and a duck-billed platypus. Come on, people.
Just click anywhere.
Return key, escape key.
No.
No.
Click anywhere.
There we go. Just got to get it off there. I guess if you want to believe that, you can. Our friend the platypus there. Irreducible complexity. Now this is an interesting argument. It says that if you have a single system composed of several well-matched integrating parts that cannot function if any one of the parts is missing, it could not have developed naturally, because you could hear all the pieces at the same time spontaneously developing. Well, unfortunately, we can show exactly an example of where that's not true. The evolution of the eye. We have both living organisms and fossil evidence to show how the eye developed over time. There are animals that have a light-sensitive patch, very simple organisms, lived in the ocean 500 million years ago, and could decide which way was up, because that was where the light was. They show a light-sensitive patch. We see development of that being protected into a cup, so it's not on the surface. You start to make that cup a little, the opening smaller, and you're approaching a camera obscura, that little pinhole camera, which now focuses an image. And so the light-sensitive patch now gets not light, but a picture. And you put a cover over that for protection, and you make the cover adjustable, and you've got an eye. We've seen all these pieces in various organisms and in fossils. So yes, all these complicated pieces can in fact develop one after the other. You can't start with all of them, but you can build to them. This is my favorite. The detailed, specific information content of DNA and living organisms is too high to have occurred by random processes. I don't know if I believe that or not, but it's a lot of information. But we do in fact see smaller organisms, insects, very small DNA structures. As we get up to higher animals, we see more DNA. So yes, you can see a development. But this high level of specified complexity must have been specified by an intelligence. Now, I have studied information theory. I have studied communications theory. Took courses in both of them. This term does not exist. It's an absolutely made-up phrase. There is no measure in information or control system or communication theory called specified complexity. So while it's an interesting idea, they just kind of invented a word that they felt they liked. All right. This one's interesting because the way it's stated is backwards. The anthropic principle says, the physical constants of the universe are fine-tuned to allow life to develop. Well, yes and no. If the physical constants of our universe, the charge of an electron, the mass of a proton, any of those very basic quantum level concepts were a little different, atoms wouldn't coalesce, molecules wouldn't form, we wouldn't be here. But that's a backward statement. We are here because this universe allows it. It wasn't designed for us, and we happen to be the lucky ones. Maybe other universes that exist that there's no life in because they didn't form the same way. Yes, the anthropic principle is valid, but they've stated it backwards. Life exists because the universe allows it. Not the universe was fine-tuned to let it happen. And it's a lousy design. We are not well designed, I'm sorry. Who has back problems? Okay? Welcome to the club. You see, your spinal cord evolved for quadrupeds, horizontal backbone. Stand upright, what happens? All the pressure on those little discs and separators, discs rupture, herniate, compress, and whoever designed it so one good blow here or here breaks the cord completely. You know, as these guys say, since I got up off of all fours, I've been having low back pains. Well, yeah, I understand that. Our respiratory system, again, was developed in animals where it was like this, head down, means everything drained out. We all drain in. That's why we are so prone to respiratory infections, pneumonias. And one genius said, let's have one pipe for the stomach and the lungs so you can choke to death while you're eating. Our feet are lousy. Feet problems? Okay, what problems? Our feet are basically derivative from grasping toes. If you look at most primates, they have an opening, their foot is shaped this way, they can grasp with it. Well, we still have that structure. We lost the output toe, but we still have that arch. So here are all these muscles and bones trying to hold up the weight that they were never designed to do. So we have foot problems. We can't see as well. We can't see ultraviolet. Birds and insects can. That's how they detect in some cases whether flowers have pollen in them or are fruiting or not. They see a pattern in the leaves in the ultraviolet. We can't hear as well as dogs. That famous dog whistle, that's real. They hear sounds we don't. And by the way, we don't hear very low notes like elephants do. So we're kind of limited. We have less than 1/10 of the scent receptors of dogs. We don't smell anywhere near as well. We cannot smell things as well. I won't say how we smell. Nowhere near as dogs or other animals. We can't see infrared. Pit vipers can see their prey by infrared, by heat. Absolute darkness. They can track prey. And we can't see in dark as well as cats. Am I kind of blocking you there? Okay. Cats have a second layer, a refractive layer behind the retina. So when you have one shot, a photon of light comes in, it hits the receptor, you see it. Cats have two chances. It hits the receptor, it misses the receptor, it bounces, it comes back, and hits on the return. So they literally have twice the night vision we have. No comment. Done. Well, I placed the playground next to the waste processing outlets. I have no idea. I guess it seemed like a good idea at the time. I'm so glad I intelligently designed you humans in my image. I would hate to be the only one in this universe with a bad back, short-sightedness, and hearing problems. Okay. We're laughing, and I admit it is humorous, but it's serious to some people. All right, let's talk about evolution. Evolution basically says, this is Darwin, 1850, gradual changes in individuals over generations and natural selection results in new species from common ancestors. Individuals with random beneficial changes are more likely to survive and breed. Well, yeah, but not quite. There's problems with that. Now we talk about neo-Darwinism, and we'll talk about the difference. It's kind of a modern synthesis with natural selection, modern genetics. Origin of the species, common natural descent, natural selection. The 30s and 50s we discovered genetics. Now we didn't get DNA till late, but we knew about genes, chromosomes, and we realized that was where the controlling of the development of the species. And then the modern synthesis really looked at some timing effects. So what's called now neo-Darwinism. The first thing it said is species well adapted to their environment change very slowly. So while this may be going on all the time, the biggest changes are when there's a change in the environment. So they talk about the concept of punctuated equilibrium. Everything's kind of fine and stable, and then the asteroid hits, or the volcanoes go off, or Pangea separates. Now you've got a drastic change in environment. And now you're going to get a lot of evolutionary changes. So rather than survival of the species, it's more really adapt or die. If you cannot adapt into the new environment, which is here, you're not going to make it. We now understand the method of change. Sexual reproduction or inheritance, random DNA mutations, or copy errors. And these occur fairly frequently. I apologize, here comes this first bit of math is a little bit later on, but not much. We can calculate, we've observed, that DNA changes occur about 0.5 to 1% chance of a DNA change in 1,000,000 years through a species. Not a big number, one chance, 1% in 1,000,000 years. We've had 3,500 billion million years, 3.5 billion years to try and get this thing right. Look, we can see it more early today. A little under 1% of live births have a birth defect. Most of them are not serious, but they are detectable. We know for a fact that cancer, DNA problems in cell reproduction, about 3/10 of the population is going to observe something of that every year. So mutations are occurring all the time. Theory of evolution. Got to top it at the statement. Theory of evolution says nothing about the origin of life. We will have to go back to it because it's an argument that's regularly brought up, but it's not there. Theory of evolution is a scientific theory. 3 things. It's based on observations. It makes testable predictions. And the big one, it can be disproven. You can never prove a scientific theory, but you can disprove it quickly. If every time I throw this up, it comes back down, I haven't proven gravity. But if I throw it up once and it doesn't come back down, I've disproven. So scientific theory has to be disprovable. I don't know how you do that with intelligent design. Here's the problem, and it's English versus the way science uses English. We have scientific laws and scientific theories. A scientific law says, here's what happens. The law of gravity. The attractive force of gravity is proportional to the product of the masses divided by the square of the distance between. It says nothing about how or why. It just says this is what happens. It's an observable statement. A theory explains. This is why it happened. The theory of relativity now starts to explain gravity. It's a distortion in space-time. It also happens to meet the laws, the requirements of the law of gravity. That still holds, but now we understand why. So theories explain. And this is the difference. When a scientist says the current theory is, he's saying, here's what happened and why it happens. It's not, here's my bright idea of the day. And that's where a good deal of anti-science comes from. It's only a theory. Well, yeah, theory's good. Have we ever seen evolution in action? You bet we have. We've seen it. The British peppered moth. This is moth in England. The environment changed, the species changed. Originally, these moths, they lived in the birch tree forest outside London, suburban England, so it's not rural. And the trees are almost silvery white. And so if you're a white-colored moth, you're in good shape. It's hard to spot you. You're not likely to be eaten by the birds. If you're a dark moth, you stand out on that white surface. Very few dark moths. In 1848, why people go out and do these surveys, I don't know. But some British naturalist actually did, and found that 98% of the peppered moths were light-colored. Comes the Industrial Revolution, particularly in England, outside London. A tremendous amount of coal being burned, soot in the air, the trees darken. They build up soot on the bark. And lo and behold, the light color is not good camouflage anymore. It's a dark gray tree. You don't want to be white standing out on it. Dark color is now good camouflage. And in fact, by 1895, 50 years, less than 50 years later, from the original survey, 98% of the moths are dark colored. It was now a survival characteristic. And we've seen it. And by the way, the interesting comment is, in the late in the 20th century, as the pollution went down, the trees got lighter, and guess what? Increasing number of light-colored moths. So, we've seen species adapting to an environment. Yeah, but that's a local. No, you're trying to tell me birds evolved from dinosaurs. Show me an example. Show me the missing link. Well, would you like to see the missing link? Oh, by the way, there's the summary. Darker trees, darker moths. Lighter trees, lighter moths. We watched it happen. You may have heard of a thing called Archaeopteryx. It's, quote, the missing link. Not really. It's a partial transition. It looks like a dinosaur, theropod dinosaur, T-Rex or Velociraptor upright on their hind legs. But it's got not a mouth or a muzzle, but a hard beak. And it's got teeth. Birds don't have it. And it's got feathers. What it really looks like, and this is the actual emblem. You can see here, here's the head. I'm going to go around to the front. There's the head with the teeth, the wings, the structure, and look at the feathers. So this is, I don't know whether you want to call it a feathered dinosaur or a bird with teeth, but here's a transition. Whales breathe air. Why does an air-breathing mammal, live in the ocean? It couldn't have evolved there, could it? Well, yeah, it could have. Fossil evidence shows that they are derived from bears, primitive bears, and about, whoops, the right button here. Up here, a thing called Pachylocetus. Get that right? Pachylocetus. It's about 50 million years ago. We've got the fossils. And it's remarkably similar to Earthstein-like fossils from land animals. But notice the feet, the legs, and pretty much land. We find these, however, in the shore, in what were shallow sea areas. So these were bears that found a new food source, coastal waters. Go another million years, Amylocetus, cetus, cetacean, whales, okay. And notice what's happened to this animal. The legs have changed. The body's gotten more streamlined. The feet are now webbed. It's developing into an aquatic animal. Now, it would be nice if we had something in 48 million years, but you kind of can't order the fossils the way you want them. So the next one we show is about 37 million years ago. Durodon. If you go and look at the fossils, at the structure, bone for bone, muscle for muscle, it's the same structure. Bones have shifted, skin has changed, but it's the same animal, the base. So here's another. We've seen the transition. What, wrong way? No, I did it again, didn't I? Come on, people, get off the screen.
You just,
Well,
click somewhere else.
Click anywhere outside of that box.
okay, click anywhere outside of that box. We'll leave it. I have to learn his computer. Whales. We did not descend from monkeys. That was the biggest theological argument opposing Darwin. We did not evolve from monkeys. Well, they're right. We did not evolve from monkeys. You actually look at human evolution. Back here, you see continuous branches. Okay? Periodically, a species would develop offspring. Some would survive and have offspring, and then they change a little bit. It's only about a million years ago, 3 million years ago, we start to see the animal, the primates were familiar with the hominids, Australopithecus. Notice, by the way, about the same time, 3 species of hominids developed. Heidelberg man, Australopithecus, and Homo sapiens, and only one survived. We're still not too sure why. We're not sure why, or there are a lot of theories, why Homo sapiens survived in Western Europe and Neanderthals didn't. But clearly they were multiple species branching off. There is no straight line. Primate, monkey, no, to us. It's a whole series of branching structures. Next, would you click on next?
Wait a minute, don't use your buttons anymore. You gotta use this cursor.
Okay.
You gotta use the local cursor.
Okay, I'll use the buttons. All right. Let's turn this off. Yeah, this is a genetic problem. Mutations are random events. And one of the arguments is that some developments in species require more than one change to be effective. So how can we have intermediate steps? Where do those come from? Oh, wait a minute, I've got to find the right button. See, it's a problem because some things, some intermediate steps may be damaging. They may have no positive effects. They may even be very harmful. So unlikely to happen. Well, yeah, that's true. Certain mutations are very unlikely to happen. But let's do a little bit, and I apologize again for the math. Low probability does not mean something won't happen. Extremely improbable events can occur if you take enough tries. Dice, rolling a pair of dice. There are 36 possible combinations for the 2 dice. 6 choices on one guy, 6 on the other. There's only one combination that gives you snake eyes, double ones. And the odds of that happening are 1 in 36. A little under 3%. Let's do it twice in a row. Well, the probability of doing that is less than 8 thousandths of 1%. Guys are getting kind of low. They're not great odds. I'll take that bet if you give me enough tries. And this is simple probability. If you try 100 times to roll snake eyes, you've got 7% chance. If you try 10,000 times, it's almost virtually certain. You have 0.05 thousandths of a chance of not winning. Given enough tries, highly improbable things can happen. Million to one. Long shot million to one, give me 10 million tries. I'm going to get there. Almost certainly. Improbable does not mean impossible given enough tries. Evolution's had 3.5 billion years to make this happen, to get where we are. I always go back to this because it's always brought up. We're not going to talk, evolution doesn't really talk about the origin of life. But it's always brought up, this couldn't happen on its own. So let's talk about it a little bit. Organic molecules and structures can't occur from inorganic material spontaneously. Well, they're just absolutely unlikely to happen. So I did a little math. There is math. Where is life going to begin? Let's make the simplest assumptions, the most conservative assumptions. Life occurs in the top 10 feet of the ocean, where the sunlight is warming the ocean. That's it. Well, that's a lot of space. That's about, 40 trillion cubic feet of water? Okay, and things are going to bounce, molecules in there are bouncing around, hitting each other. Let's make a really ridiculously low assumption that you get 1 collision per minute in every foot of water. You get a lot more, but that's a real low one. So in a million years, you get a ridiculous number of collisions. And let's say the probability of a favorable collision where 2 atoms are going to stick together and start to form an organic molecule, carbon-based molecule, is 1 in a trillion. Chances of favorable collision in the time frame we have is 0.999. In other words, it's a quadrillion to 1 that this is going to happen. You may remember there was an experiment in the 50s, a Miller-Urey experiment. They did something very simple. They created what they thought was a copy of the atmosphere of the Earth 4 billion years ago. Nitrogen, methane, whatever else. Put it in a big flask. Supplied energy to it. They put a spark, lightning going in the atmosphere. They put a spark through this mass of gases, water vapor as well. And 3 days later, when they looked at it, there's this brown goop, blackish brown goop on the bottom of the flask. And they analyzed it, and they found amino acids. Amino acids are the things that get together to make proteins. So in 3 days, in this pseudo-atmosphere, they were able to see organic molecules forming spontaneously. Now, there's been a lot of argument about that experiment. That may not have been the right representation of the atmosphere. It may have been not properly controlled. But the point is that these things happen randomly, given enough tries. Of course, there's always this possibility. God has a sense of humor, and he said, okay, let there be evolution. I think that, I love to show this one to the fundamentalists. Look, we're talking about science versus faith. Science says, here are the facts. What conclusions can you draw from them? On the other hand, faith says, here's the conclusion. What facts can we find to support them? And if you start with the conclusion, you can find enough facts to support it. You've got to cherry pick your information. So, there's a basic difference here. Evolution is a validated scientific theory, testable, predictable, disprovable. Intelligent design is an article of faith, not a scientific theory. What should we be teaching? Science, not faith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lou. Really enjoyed that. It's fascinating to me the way people are so drawn to recurring, including this one, post hoc ergo propter hoc,
Yes.
fallacy. The other thing that I make as a retired scientist myself is another appeal that feeds into things like intelligent design is the old saying that teleology is in fact the necessary mistress of the scientist. You come up with a reason for something happening.
That's right.
The difference is whether you can test it or not. And if you can't test it, it's irrelevant.
If you can't test it, it ain't science.
Yeah. Questions, comments, please.
What's teleology?
Teleology.
Oh,
Teleology. Things are designed to function properly.
Not like our cars.
Yeah. Oh, well, don't even start there. No.
In terms of intelligent design, it's been proven it's not needed. When I was working in Office of Secretary of Defense back around 2005, I was working counterterrorism. We got a lot of scientific experiments shown to us. One of the things that was demonstrated was a device which is now used in graduate laboratories, where it's almost like a slow cooker. You throw in the right chemicals, you throw in the right temperature, you leave it for a while, not very long, just a couple days, and out pops a virus, out pops RNA. Complexity theory shows that nonlinear interactive things can self-organize into very interesting structures, like hurricanes, or like RNA and like DNA. Give it enough time, give it the right chemicals, and it will form. What's missing, we don't know what makes this thing which looks like us genetically alive. We don't know what that spark is that causes that DNA or RNA to be alive. With the virus, it's not. It was a polio virus, by the way. It scared the hell out of us because the terrorists can produce these things. Oh, by the way, evolution is part of Genesis in the Bible. If you look at the structure of how it proceeded, it went from the vegetable to the simple animals, all the way up and ended with man. So even in the Bible, you have Genesis, and you have evolution. It's interesting.
Of course, you also have the people of the land of Nod. Where'd they come from? I always thought it was my favorite question.
Just one thing is, I think, if you allow for one event of intelligent design, every event must be intelligent design, which means nothing you do was actually according to a scientific law at all. It was all called for by God up in heaven.
Well, that also explains why you're not responsible for anything you do, because God ordained it.
Just one minor thing in the talk. You mentioned that whales were related to bears, and Darwin speculated that it would be plausible. But from what I've read, the closest relatives are actually on land are hippopotamus, and I don't remember the ancient wolf-shaped type animal that did evolve. The second thing is you showed that why that makes a lot more sense, and the other arguments don't hold up. But it seems maybe it doesn't say why people should give up their religion, and I think a lot of people who support the creationism, first, it doesn't matter to them in their evolution is true or not. So it doesn't matter their day-to-day life, whether Jesus is going to save them. And you can believe, we love, I'm presuming other people are largely like, we love rationality, explanations, and facts and reason. Other people not so much maybe. If something makes them feel good, they're willing to believe it. So the real case against this, how to avoid teaching creationism, would have to address perhaps something along the lines of getting religion out of schools.
Yeah, that is a real issue. Fortunately, I don't know if it'll hold up, a federal judge outlawed the, Tennessee or Kentucky law that said you have to post the 10 Commandments in every classroom? Louisiana, I don't remember which one. I have no problem with that, but I want them to post the laws of Hammurabi up next to it. Pick them up. But yeah, the issue is not, should they give up religion? Should we deny religion? The issue is, should we teach it as fact? And that's the transition. They want to teach intelligent design or creation science, whatever you call it, in the schools as being an equally valid theory to evolution. It's not.
Lou, what exactly is being taught in the Florida public schools, and what is actually in the textbooks today?
Today it's evolution. But I was teaching, and one of the things you were told, it wasn't written down in the curriculum anywhere, but you were told that you need to say something about there are other theories of how this
Today,
happened.
what is?
I don't know what's going on today. That was 20 years ago. And with the bringing in of, Monroe County is doing school chaplains, it's going to get worse. It's going to get more extreme. We're going to see more religion, faith-based things taught as fact. And that's really the issue.
If I can, I think the court case you referred to as in Texas was actually Pennsylvania, and where the court case was. The second case is, or the second point would be, anywhere that you have temperatures that chemistry can react, you're going to get some kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And so the idea that there's life going on everywhere in the universe, of some, well, I shouldn't say that, chemical reaction.
The issue of the, deep hydrothermal vents, where we see life with no sunshine as support, coming with whole different chemical basis for survival. We believe now that's possible on things like moons of Saturn, because there's ice and a layer of water and heat from inside. Yeah, it's all possible.
Thank you for the presentation. 2 points. First point, I had read that rather than the surface of the ocean, that instead it's deep geothermal-like heat.
Yes.
That was one point. And the second point was that is it sufficient for survival to qualify something as intelligent? That's not sufficient in your view.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Is survival as a mechanism, that which gets extinguished doesn't have the ability to continue, is that enough of an intelligent process to qualify to be characterized as intelligent?
I don't think so. I think you're looking at a pure random event that says when the bushes stop having enough leaves on them, the animals with taller necks can reach the trees, and so we have giraffes. The ones that didn't reach the trees, they starved. I don't think there's anything intelligent there. I think there's a mechanism that says, if you can handle what's going on, great. If not, go away.
I've been educated, and I'm very grateful. On the one hand, though, why we so curious? Number one. And number two, why are we so bent while we are trying to understand and answer all these questions? Why are we so bent to killing each other? That's the one thing that I would like to understand.
Well, you have to understand, now I'm going to put on my Catholic theologian hat, which I'm not, by the way. If what the church says is true, it must be accepted. As soon as any one thing is not accepted, you have to put everything into question. The Inquisition is very clearly justifiable. I am torturing you for this momentary pause in your life to save you from eternal life. If you can make those kinds of religious-based decisions, you can justify just about anything. If you like to find out why certain Muslim sects agree to launch a jihad, look in the Quran. If you want to find out why certain Muslim sects say this is absolutely forbidden, look in the Quran. You can pick whatever you want to support whatever you want. As soon as you say, I will accept on faith things which I cannot prove and things which go against what we can prove, you've opened up a whole can of worms. You've got to start with the statement of, if you believe it, prove it. If it's not provable, thank you.
How about the Holocaust?
I feel a little bit sympathetic toward the people who are intelligent design because it's like beating up the kid who's handicapped.
Yeah.
And but I want to extend that to all of us. Many of us push back on things that make us uncomfortable.
Yes.
And for example, I'll take something that's very controversial, but it's an extension of what we're talking about. Say global warming. We are extremely adaptable. Life is prolific, it's highly adaptable. This idea, for example, that the Earth is warming and all life will be destroyed, that doesn't make any sense. It goes against evolution. That we are the highly adaptable, one of the most highly adaptable species. It's like, I'm a snowbird, it's like saying, oh, well, people in Florida obviously are proof they can't survive the summer because it's so hot. Obviously, we can survive in a warmer environment, but the problem is that science is a process. It's not a body of knowledge, and that the same logic of people who are intelligent design pushing against evolution are the same type of people pushing against saying that life will end when global warming occurs.
Global warming won't destroy life. The Earth will survive quite nicely without us. It's happened to all the other hominid species. Something changed and they couldn't adapt, so they died.
Right.
Species died off. Global warming, if in its worst case, may say, Homo sapiens, goodbye.
Yeah, potentially. I remember Carl Sagan, one of our mutual heroes, okay? Extinction is the rule. Survival is the exception.
Yes, 99% of species that have ever lived are gone. That's the way the system works.
So, this is kind of an obvious statement, but we don't know what we don't know. And there are many ancient books of faith that come to answer the question why we are here. And one school of thought is that we can't answer what happened before, and we can't predict what will happen afterwards in terms of life. So, meaning that, what happened before the Big Bang Theory, or what's going to happen after we die. So the question then becomes, with artificial intelligence, which will increase our knowledge of existence, how do you address the questions of the unknown if you count as the Bible or the Judeo-Christian Bible says. There are, may you be fruitful and multiply as many grains of sand on all of the beaches in the world, and as many stars there are in the heavens. And if you do the kind of math calculations of which is greater, apparently there are many, many more stars in the heavens than there are grains of sands on all the beaches of the world. So how do you address artificial intelligence within the answering the question of what we don't know?
I don't think artificial intelligence is going to find any new information. I think artificial intelligence is going to make connections from information we already have. Where those connections will be, I have no idea. But yes, I think we will see some changes, but I don't think it's going to affect the basic dichotomy we're talking about, which is how do you base your judgments? Do you base them on some sort of basically provable theory, or do you base them on I believe? And that's really the issue. If you base it on I believe, then you can believe whatever you want. I mean, I love the Egyptian theory of the beginning of life. Which one of the gods made it with his sister, and the sperm that fell on, that wasn't used, fell on the earth and we became people? What? It's a creation theory.
Makes sense to me.
No. One of the big problems with artificial intelligence, from my point of view, Lou, is just like what we call our intelligence, the output is dependent upon the input. And you can get garbage both ways.
Here's a thought on the mechanism for evolution. I had a good 6-hour discussion with a biochemist, a biophysicist, talking about his research. And it was on a class of things like viruses, I forget what he called them. They enter a body of an animal or a vegetable. They enter the body of a living thing. And they provide their genetic material to the cells in that being. But they don't destroy those cells. They move on. And one of the theories for evolution is that there was an infection of this type way back. Remember the Cambrian explosion?
Yes.
That there was an infection of this type. It would have to be both sexes, by the way, for the thing to be mutual. That may have caused evolution. So there may be an actual physical mechanism of a virus-like thing having inserted the new genetics. There also could be the random mutations. There can be both.
Yeah.
But it occurred. It occurred. There's no doubt it occurred. There's no doubt that we don't need intelligent design. What we do need is to understand that spark of life. Why is the dead cell different from the living one? They're identical physically and chemically.
Just a comment on mutation. How many people have blue eyes? Do you realize they didn't exist 10,000 years ago? There was a random mutation somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. It's a recessive mutation that produced blue eyes. All early Homo sapiens had black or brown eyes, no blue. Did that have any effect, any significant effect, pro or con survival? No, but it's a random event that happened.
There is a theory out about that, about the sun coming in, vitamin D, and that the people who migrated into the north area needed more sun, so the skin is more sensitive, and somehow in that same gene package are also the eyes, and so that shows up then as the Scandinavians and Northern Europeans have blue eyes, and they are light skinned, and when they are in the sun they get burned like hell, and the brown skin, the Mediterranean stone.
Yeah,
so that's the typical random situation.
Yeah, there does seem to be a correlation between skin color and eye color in this case. That more people with blue eyes are fair-skinned. But, it doesn't take very many generations for it to mix completely. 10,000 years ago, we're talking about 500 generations? You know, that's an awful lot of mixing of genetic material. But yeah, you're right, there does seem to be that effect.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out my favorite argument against creationism that I've heard from, I think Baker was his name, that if you accept that it takes intelligence to create something as complicated as people, so then God did it, but then you have to assume, well, God was a very intelligent, complex thing, so who created God? So now you have not done anything other than push it up one level. So now you got to worry about where did God come from. If you say, well, okay, God didn't need to be created, now you say, okay, intelligent things can come out without a creator. So the whole thing either goes into an endless loop.
It turns all the way down, right?
Turns all the way down.
Yeah. That's like, creation of the universe. All we do is, you're right, push it back a level. We now have M theory that says these planes created. Where'd they come from?
Well, and then, in fact, that's what you see repeatedly in terms of revisionist thinking by folks about creation and the function of God. Those of us who are humanists say that they always find the God of the gaps. What we don't understand, there you go.
Yeah, it's a very convenient excuse for I don't understand. God did it. I don't have to understand it. And the problem I have is exactly that phrase. I don't have to understand it. Well, why do I have to understand anything else? I'll just take it all on faith. That, to me, is the danger.
All right. Do we have somebody else? Thank you again, Lou.